In January 6th of 2022, The Weeknd released his 5th studio album with Dawn FM. The album aimed at continuing the story of After Hours through a purgatory type of radio station hosted by Jim Carrey of all people.
On 103.5 Dawn FM.
It's one of The Weeknd's most ambitious albums in terms of concept, especially because fans saw a side of The Weeknd that they usually never see, because he actually does try to have a healthy relationship instead of the usual toxicity that comes along with a Weeknd album. Dawn FM also carried a bit of the 80s magic that After Hours carried, and it works pretty well in a lot of the tracks on Dawn FM.
I heard you're married, girl.
However, Dawn FM failed to catch the attention of the public, with most people already forgetting it. For a Weeknd album, Dawn FM disappointed in many ways, especially from the perspective of numbers, as the album would not reach the top spot of Billboard's 200, which hadn't happened since Kissland 9 years before. And Kissland was The Weeknd's first album, so it's actually understandable why that one didn't reach the top. On top of that, the album also didn't have any solidified hits outside of Take My Breath, which released like 5 months before Dawn FM even dropped. It's to the point that The Weeknd has more songs on the charts right now from Starboy than he does Dawn FM. But I will say, Die For You is a hit. That song is crazy. But even with all of that being said, I think people sleep on Dawn FM. In terms of album of the year conversations, I rarely see Dawn FM be brought up. And I really don't understand why, because the album is really good and it's at least worth a mention. I think the story of the album is solid, you know, showing The Weeknd of maturing, turning into this old guy, and then there's like baby Weeknd in the video, and then old guy Weeknd is trying to stop young guy Weeknd, but young guy Weeknd kills old guy Weeknd. Then he's also like in a date. It's very crazy, but still very creative. You still keep the 80s production that we love from The Weeknd, especially on a song like Sacrifice, where you can really hear the Thriller inspiration. It's amazing. Of course, vocally, you know The Weeknd has it, right? But even in a song like Gasoline, like that British voice or whatever the hell that he's putting up, I like it. I think it's fun. Additionally, some of the songs on the album are just amazing. Out of Time is one of my favorite songs this year, and what I think is a perfect representation of what a laid-back pop song should sound like.
I love you, girl, but I'm out of time.
The song samples Midnight Pretenders by Tomoko Aran. And that sound that Tomoko has on a song like Midnight Pretenders is perfect for what The Weeknd is going for. And most of all, the song isn't boring. And I think that's because The Weeknd has perfected the pop song at this point. And you can really tell that he has in listening to this album. But you may be wondering, if the album is what I make it out to be and it's so good, then how come it's so forgotten? And there's a couple of reasons for this. For example, I feel like there's stuff like overexposure that's coming into play. Just because The Weeknd has been around for so long at this point. And I've seen some people say that the 80s sound is what's holding Dawn FM back. And although I do think it's a solid argument, I just don't believe it to be true. Mainly because when you look through the internet, you'll find out that that 80s aesthetic type of thing is still alive and well. Like, it was only last year that Silk Sonic kind of took over the music industry. And even this year, there's a bunch of songs that sound like they're from the whole throwback aesthetic type of thing. So personally, I think that it's more than just like, we're done with the 80s aesthetic type of thing. Because, you know, people are still fans of the 80s. But again, I do think that could be part of it. But to be fair, I don't think that people hate Dawn FM. I just think that people think Dawn FM isn't After Hours.
I'm heartless, and I'm back to my ways, 'cause I'm heartless.
In March 20th of 2020, The Weeknd released After Hours.
Scared to live again.
It's very hard for an album that has a lot of love to be universally loved, but The Weeknd pulled it off.
When I look at you in your eyes.
The album still has the rough and dark lyrics that we know The Weeknd for, but it does it through a series of pop songs that are amazing. In my opinion, the album is one of the most iconic of the last 20 years, and I feel like as time goes on, the better it's gonna age. Especially with songs like Blinding Lights and Save Your Tears being the massive hits that they are. Major emphasis on Blinding Lights, by the way. because I argue that that's one of the greatest pop songs of all time, or at least it's up there. I think it embodies what a great song is supposed to be, and I think most people agree with me considering it took over the charts for like 2 years straight. And it's clear that The Weeknd made the most of this album. It really made it feel special. The videos were cool and the performances were amazing because it followed the story of the music videos, and he had the red suit everywhere. At a time where most artists kind of went quiet and were holding off to their songs because of the pandemic, The Weeknd really shined. And everybody loved it except for the Grammys, but everybody loved it. And that's why I think that Dawn FM was kind of a disappointment for a lot of people. To be clear, I'm not arguing that Dawn FM is better than After Hours. I'm not arguing that Dawn FM is better than House of Balloons. I'm more so just saying that this album is really underappreciated. People wanted Blinding Lights and Save Your Tears, and they were disappointed when they didn't get it. But then again, I don't even think that's the main reason why Dawn FM has gone under the radar. Because I think what's really the biggest problem with Dawn FM is that we're living in the TikTok era. And let me be clear, I think the TikTok era in music has been great, especially for artists like Steve Lacy and even older artists like Kate Bush. But Dawn FM is just not the type of album that matches that vibe that TikTok usually goes for. And some of you may be saying that The Weeknd doesn't need TikTok, and you might be right. But with the recent success of a song like Die For You, I think The Weeknd shows that TikTok is a pretty powerful tool. But I do think there's one thing about Dawn FM that a lot of people overlook. And what I mean is that there's this one song on Dawn FM that's gonna set the world on fire once it gets like the proper promotion.
Remember I was a hero.
In early 2022, I felt like music was missing that big hit that would open up the year and open the doors, break the ice type of thing. And I feel like this year specifically, we really did miss out on this aspect of music, kind of unnecessarily, because hitting on The Weeknd's Dawn FM was the song Less Than Zero.
'Cause I can't get it out of my head.
If you want another example of The Weeknd perfecting pop music, then this song is a great example. As I see it, the song is essentially about getting over somebody, which makes sense because it feels like the main theme of the album is to let go. I seriously don't know why this song hasn't taken off the way that I thought it would when it came out, but I seriously believe that this song will somehow find its way to the top of the charts. If The Weeknd plays his cards right, we have a hit here.
You tried your best with me, I know.
Not gonna lie, now that I think about it, it was the album cover, wasn't it? Like, people looked at the album cover and they were like, I am not clicking on this album. Anyways, with that being said, shout out to y'all, of course. Y'all been going crazy. Shout out to me, and shout out to Ye Dilla.